Hey guys, this is ggDoA, and last night at Gamescon they announced 5 new cards for the Grand Tournament, so I thought I would do a quick video here this morning and kind of give my quick thoughts on those and then upload it, and then you can see my quick thoughts on those. So there you go. That's the plan. So let's start off with Warhorse Trainer 3 for a 2-4. Good stats already. I mean, you've got other cards like Imp Gang Boss that have similar stats. They do provide a decent amount of board control, but this is a cool card because your Silver Hand recruits have +1 attack while it's out. So this is just more synergy with the Silver Hand recruits, which seems like something Blizzard is really pushing in this expansion right now. So it's cool to see. I think this card could definitely see some use in Paladin decks. And it's almost looking like we may have a new archetype developing with Paladin because there's just so much being done in this set, it looks like anyway, with the Silver Hand Recruit tokens, the 1/1s that come out of the Paladin hero power, and now a lot of other cards too. So it's interesting to see Blizzard going that direction. I hope we see just as much emphasis in terms of synergizing with hero powers and other classes. I think we're seeing some of it, but so far the most we've seen has been with Paladin, and I'm really excited to try it out. So I think this card by itself is okay, but if you combine it with all the synergy that it looks like we're going to have with the other Paladin cards and the neutral cards even that involve Silver Hand recruits, I think it'd be pretty good. So it's an exciting card to see. And let's move to the next one. It's going to be the Charged Hammer, a card of much contention in the community since it's been released less than, 12 hours ago, about 14 hours ago or something like that. A 4-mana 2/4 weapon. Death Rattle, your hero power becomes deal 2 damage. And so it's basically like you get the Hunter hero power, but you can do it to anything on the board. So it's as if you had Steam Weedle Sniper or something like that. But it's an interesting card because it fundamentally changes the way that you play the class. Because it's a big shift to go from producing a minion on the board in terms of a totem to go to just simply direct damage, and it's targeted, so it's very good direct damage, but direct damage, it's a very big shift in how you're going to play the class. It's a very big shift in the amount of efficiency, card efficiency that Shaman usually gets through the totems. So this is going to have to be one of those cards that we're really going to need to see a deck built around. I don't think you can just throw this in any Shaman deck and just kind of hope it works out. The other issue here is that it does have 4 durability, so when you play it, presumably without, if you in theory, you can just play another weapon right away, get the Death Rattle, and get your hero power changed. But without that, if you don't have another weapon, you're going to be waiting at least 4 turns before this activates, unless somebody harrisons it or something, right? So it's going to be something that takes a lot of setup to produce, and that's also something that's going to need to go into consideration when you're building a deck around it. I've always thought it would be really cool to have a Shaman direct damage deck. I've tried it a few times when a Magma Shock came out. I thought, maybe that would be, or is it Lava Shock? The one that frees up your crystals. But when that came out, I really thought, hey, maybe we can do something with direct damage now because we have a way to deal with overload. But with only 2 cards that let you mitigate all that overload, it didn't really work out terribly well. I made one, it got some wins, but it was by no means competitive and really, really not viable. But maybe with this type of card, we can start to have more of a board control, direct damage centric Shaman. So sort of Shaman's answer to Freeze Mage, if you want to think of it that way, where instead of just freezing the board and holding everything at bay, you might maybe, depending on all the other cards that are coming out, have enough to keep the board fairly clean and also deal a lot of direct damage to your opponent. That's kind of a reach. I know I'm kind of like really reaching for that hope, but maybe. And if there is a deck like that, this card could see use in it. Other than that, I don't think it's going to see a lot of use just by itself. It's not the type of card that you would just throw in any of the existing Shaman decks, really. Even something aggressive like Mech Shaman, this just takes so long to get rolling, and what are you going to cut, right? I mean, you've already got Power Mace for weapons, and everything else in Mech Shaman right now, there's not a lot of wiggle room to include a fairly slow card like this, because if you're playing an aggressive Shaman, you're paying 4 mana for only 2 immediate damage, and yes, it is obviously 8 damage total if you do all 3 attacks, but it takes a long time. So I think it's a little bit too slow for face, a little bit too slow for aggro. It doesn't really fit in any of the mid-range or control Shaman options we have right now. But maybe, just maybe as I mute my Skype, we will have an opportunity to have a direct damage shaman somewhere down the line, and it'll work out. Again, maybe we're going to see other cards that synergize with this type of thing in TGT. Hopefully we do, because it's a cool card, and I like the idea behind it, right? Let's move on to Fist of Jaxxus, 4 mana. When you play or discard this, deal 4 damage to a random enemy. So, suddenly, all those cards like Soulfire, like Succubus, cards that make you discard from your hand, get a little bit better. Obviously, you're going to have situations where you're going to be discarding not that, and in that case, it's 4 mana for 4 damage, so it's not really too cost efficient if you look at a lot of the other direct damage options. Obviously, Mage has 6 damage for 4 mana. But the benefit is that you can maybe get this played from your hand. The drawback, again, is that it's random damage. So, out of the cards we saw released last night, this one actually intrigued me the least, I would say, because it's very, very obvious how you're supposed to get it to work well. But the way you're supposed to get it to work well, I don't think is going to work. So, we'll see. Again, maybe there's going to be more synergy with the cards that are coming out. But this one, it's cool. It could be a big board swing card if it happens, but it requires you to stock your deck with other cards that just aren't maybe quite as useful. And then even if you do have those cards in there, you still might take the negatives. You still might discard the wrong card. You might not get to play Fist of Jaxxus like you want to. So, it's a bit of a risk. It's a bit of a consistency factor, I think, for me. And so I'm going to need to see more cards that synergize with this before I really want to try it in any of the decks I'm going to build. So let's move on to Flash Heal. 1 mana, restore 5 health. A priest spell. Very, very cool. And so it's straight up, 1 damage, restore 5 health. Obviously, everybody immediately goes, oh, Akanai Soul Priest, you can do 5 damage for 1 mana. It's even better than Mind Blast, right? And, they're right to bring that up, because maybe we do have some options where we could see more of a direct damage-oriented priest deck. And you would assume that this is restore 5 health to a target that you choose. So you can do it to the enemy hero, you can do it to an enemy minion, you can also heal your own minions. So depending on how you build priests, it is a pretty versatile card. So I like it. I think it's interesting, and I think it could see some use. I like the idea of classes like priest becoming more spell-based and less minion-based. Right now, obviously, in general, Hearthstone is a very minion-centric game. You deal a lot with the creatures that are on the board, but as other CCGs have sort of matured over time, we do usually see options where you can sort of shift away from a more creature-centric style of play to a more spell-centric style of play, and that excites me. I want to see that option in Hearthstone. We do have it to a certain extent with decks like Freeze Mage, and to a certain extent decks like, I would say, even Oil Rogue, because you run on fairly minimal creatures. But to have a very, very, almost purely spell-centric deck is something that's still a bit of a rarity in Hearthstone right now. So I think this is a type of card that could push certain strategies in that direction. So it's very, very cool to see. And I think by itself, it's not the greatest. But when used with some of these other cards, like Akanai Soul Priest, we could maybe see more direct damage shaman, or not shaman, well, maybe shaman, but also priest kind of popping up. So it's neat. It's interesting. Living Roots, our druid spell. 1 mana, choose 1, deal 2 damage, or summon 2 1/1 saplings. Again, it seems like in this expansion, druid is getting a lot more early game stuff. We've seen a couple 2 mana cards already. Now we have this 1 mana spell. It's good for damage. It's 1 mana for 2 damage, so it's fairly efficient in that regard. It's kind of like Holy Smite in that way. But you can also choose, of course, like as the druid class often does, to get 2 1/1 saplings instead. And so 1/1 saplings aren't necessarily too thrilling by themselves. They die to hero powers, they die to whirlwind effects. But I was talking about this on my other video too, that I've always wanted to build a more early aggressive druid buffing deck. And so this, combined with some of those buffing cards that raise the health and attack of your minions, might actually work out pretty well. So this is a card that interests me. I'm definitely going to be playing around with it, with that strategy I was talking about, kind of an early game aggressive buffing druid deck. And we'll see how it goes, because like I said again on my last video, I'm not the biggest fan of minion buffing in Hearthstone because the removal is so high. But at the same time, druid has efficient enough buffing that I think you can kind of get around it. So druid and paladin have pretty efficient buffing. So I think it's something that I'm going to want to try, and yeah, we'll see how it works out, I guess, when the expansion comes out, hopefully, presumably, very, very soon. And yep, that is it for the 5 cards that were revealed last night. Thanks for watching, guys. I'm going to be putting up a lot more videos, obviously, as the expansion draws closer. As the expansion comes out, I'm going to do all my pack opening on screen. Or on stream rather, gonna do videos with that as well too, and hopefully release a couple early deck guides as well. And they might not be good decks, but they'll definitely be fun decks. So keep an eye out for that. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next video.